Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and people that don't conform to a gender binary, welcome to the Future Collaborations podcast supported by Autism Able. Our whole thing is about bringing people that are neurotypical and neurodivergent together, and we've got an absolute doozy for our first episode. We have David Littlefair from Portions for Foxes, who is running the Marrapalooza festival for the third time. David, how are you doing?
Hi, Adam. Thanks so much for having me. Really pleased to be on the podcast. And yeah, cheers. Really can't wait to speak with you.
That's great. That's great to hear. So, how did you actually get started in the whole music industry thing?
Well, so very long time ago, I used to I used to go to St. Robert's School in Washington, and I at the time I think Sunderland, especially, has a lot more going on than it did when I was a teenager. I used to go to these gigs put on by a band called This Ain't Vegas that were called Beat Happening or Beats Happening in Sunderland at the time, and that was basically it. There was kind of nothing else to go and see that was organised by anybody in sort of our part of the northeast. And me and my friend Steve were massive music fans, and we played in a covers band. We did a lot of Blink 182 covers and things like that.
Nice.
I'm told at 16. This is, they might not have been the songs that I would choose to play now, but they were the only ones I could play on the guitar at the time. So we started doing gigs in the school in the Washington Arts Centre and handing out flyers for them in the sort of school hall. And we did about 3 of those, I think, and then as we sort of left college, started to go to university. Steve sat me down and said, I've had this idea. We're going to be music promoters, and we, I don't know, I just kind of made it up as we went along. So off the back of that, we started to run a night at a club in Sunderland called Bar Pure. It's changed now. It's near Park Lane. I don't remember what it's called. And it used to be a quid in and a quid a pint. And I don't really know exactly what happened beyond this, but we'd put sort of bands on there, and then sometimes we'd bring in bands from out of town. But then eventually agents started to find out what we were doing, and so before we knew it, sort of within a year, we were putting on Swedish hardcore punk bands and these kind of experimental noise groups and things like that at places like Bar Pure and Chambers in Sunderland. And I just kind of rode along with that and was a bit like, I'll see what else I can, what else can I book? It's remarkably easy. I think this is the thing that you realize as well, as like, I didn't need to know anything more than about the bands really, and then just find out what their agent was on their website or something like that, email them and say, could we book X or Y to play in the Northeast? I mean, it was so easy at the time, but also very like not many people really knew how to even take the first step or couldn't really, or didn't find out. So when we were doing it, I think it was quite I don't know, there wasn't quite as many people, and by the end of my sort of last year of university, I'd brought tons of bands to Sunderland and Newcastle, like Final Fantasy, which was the project of the violinists of the Arcade Fire. Had a band called Caribou play in Sunderland for £5 a ticket. They're like gigantic electronic band that I've since put on it, Hall 1 of the stage. Had a metal band who I think you'd really like, actually, called Russian Circles. We had them play.
I think I've heard of them. It's one of them bands that I've never really listened to, but I need to. They're on the, I've got a big list of metal bands that I still need to listen to.
Of course. So I was really big into sort of what was called post metal then. So I brought Russian Circles and High on Fire and Pelican and a couple of others like that to Sunderland, and ISIS as well. Sort of all these kinds of bands of that era. And it was literally just, I just emailed the agents and they'd say, how much could you pay this band? And what I will say is that by the time I finished university, I'd only really just started to figure out how the economics of it worked, and I wasn't very good with money to begin with. So had like 3 Also, the university used to just be able to walk in and get an overdraft from a bank in like a downstairs part of the union. So by the time I left, I had 3 overdrafts, and
Jeez.
yeah, it took me a long, long time to work back from that because I don't know, it's really challenging in the Northeast to make music work, and that's for a bunch of different reasons. Which I don't know if you'd want to go into them, but hopefully we will later in the chat. But the point being that it was just me and my mate really decided we wanted to do it. We didn't have anything going on didn't have any better prospects.
Oh,
Cracking, you know?
yeah. That's so basically you were bored and
Yeah.
decided I'm going to put some music gigs on.
Yeah. And also like I think we were really ambitious. We didn't want to be, there's plenty of people putting sort of 2 or 3 bands on somewhere in Sunderland. Like I played those kinds of gigs when I was a teenager, and we really wanted it to be like we want to bring in out of town bands and label bands and bands from all over the world and put them on in this little pub that I used to go to as a 16-year-old, and within a couple of years we were doing it. So it's not hard, I guess. It's you have to have the right kind of attitude, but it's not like rocket science. What I mean.
Yeah, that's fair. How do you think it sort of changed from when you were doing it as a teenager to how it is now with, like, I mean, all the places in Newcastle, all the places in Sunderland, all the cats that want to. Hello. Yeah, how do you think it's changed in that regard, like the whole music scene in the Northeast, especially Tynemware?
Yeah, I mean, the music scene in the Northeast is amazing compared to what it was like when I was younger. I think like much better. There's so many more places to go, so many more venues, so much more variety. Um, when I started to do gigs in Newcastle, we were in the Ousburn a lot, where we were doing Marrapalooza, and it was only really the Cumberland Arms if you had a smaller show, or the Clooney if you had a bigger one. And that was maybe the first 2 or 3 years. So almost everything I put on in Newcastle to begin with was it. Sometimes we did a couple of gigs at the Academy,
Yeah,
but most of them, most of the cultural life of Newcastle's in my lifetime has been in the Ousburn Valley, and there was only really 2 venues. I did a few shows at the Old Star and Shadow, um, so it was. I just think there was much less variety, and it's much stronger now. There's so much more, and it's much easier to find out what's going on. I think that's the other thing. Like to tell people about my gigs back in the day. I don't know how this is going to sound, but I spent hours and hours and hours, and I still do this. We still either go out flyering or we pay people to go flyering and things. But I would spend all kinds of time outside of gigs handing out little flyers that I'd printed out on like paper sometimes for like something that was a bit cheap, and that's how you found out about things, was like very analog. And I was
yeah,
a very big adopter of like Facebook and things like that as a promotional tool, because I'm not the brightest bloke, I guess. But it was good in some respects, in that people maybe had a bit more time, or maybe the cost of living problems that we have now maybe weren't quite as acute in sort of, although we're talking about like when the banking crisis happened here, so
yeah. Like,
people had
was that
no money.
2008?
Yeah, and I was like, I kept working short contracts because I couldn't get like a long-term full-time job. So I was doing the gigs around that. And yeah, there's a lot of I think it's so much easier to tell people about gigs now, but you're also really reliant on like the algorithms of social media and things like that.
Yeah,
And I think that's a definite challenge, but there's just so much more going on, and it's such a much more accomplished like place culturally than it once was.
I think, like, you can pick up, like, you can look at Narc magazine and obviously Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, stuff like that. But you are, like you said, you are at the whims of the algorithm, and
Yeah.
if you don't get the right hashtags or whatever, then you might get 3 or 4 people at a show that's gonna be great. Which
Yeah.
you are just, like I said, you are just at the whims of an algorithm. Um, I know that we've worked together before.
Mhm.
Like I said, this is supported by Autism Able, which is the company I work for now. Which, it's been a couple of months. It still feels weird to say that I work for them.
Mhm.
Um, But we did a gig a couple of years ago at a church in Sunderland, which was very weird for me. Very weird for me. I hadn't set foot in a church in about 10 years.
Yeah,
I got to play bass. Just
yeah.
tell us a bit more about that and how you got involved with Autism Able in the first place.
So, Autism Able is obviously absolutely amazing. Like initiative, all of the things that Autism Able do are set such a high bar for like doing cultural and creative things in like alongside people who are both neurotypical and neurodiverse. And just think what you guys have done in Sunderland and South Shields is really like incredible. Really, you know, and really not you know, very very few organizations would try and achieve those kinds of things. So it's really remarkable. It's quite like, I know Andrew, who sort of helped us set up Autism Able from my music scene days. So we used to go on a forum called Rattled by the Rush, which was like a music forum for the Northeast. I think it's sort of sad that I think those kinds of things don't really exist anymore.
Yeah.
And we hated each other, slagged each other off loads. I said his band was like a crap Arcade Fire. He didn't like my band, and and then eventually, I don't know what happened, but at some point, he was a much more mature man than me, and sort of made friends instead. And he started to record my old band, which I don't think I ever paid him for, and I'm really really grateful for. Um, and uh, and years and years later, after he'd started to set this up, I think it was in lockdown as well. You know, I got I was applying to Summer Streets Festival, and I'd been working with Autism Able on like grant writing for a little bit to try and win some
Yeah.
money to the project. And I said, I've met this composer in on like an online webinar in Scotland, that I just rocked up to in lockdown because I'm now on. And and I asked them like, oh, I work with this charity. I think we'd like to do loads more music related things. Do you know anybody who you think would be useful? And they were all, oh, Ben Lund. Ben, you should speak to Ben Lund. So the first sort of project like that we did was with, and I think it was before I think it was before you and I had met, and we were in lockdown working in like on a music project that we got some money from Summer Streets Festival for, that we then did at the Sea Change Cafe. And that was amazing. That was like over a few days. I was terrified I was going to get COVID the whole time. It was kind of in the sort of period where lockdown had kind of stopped, but you know, the kind of coronavirus is still around. And we kind of nipped up to Shields for the weekend and banged out like 3 songs in 2 days, and it was frantic and like amazing. And off the back of that, I was thinking that was great, but there was a lot of people who go to Autism Able who don't know how to play an instrument. So we were only working with people who knew how to play guitar and bass and things like that, and maybe who were like really confident, really wanted to get involved and knew their instruments and knew that they wanted to be a singer or something. And I was thinking after that, right, well, what if we did another music project, but like people who couldn't play an instrument formally could be involved? And it really set me about thinking about ways to do that. And then there was this other scheme in Sunderland called Composer Curator, which I don't think is still going, but it was specifically for experimental music in Sunderland. And like Boundaries Festival, which is like an amazing experimental music festival in Sunderland, was originally sort of funded by that grant. And we put in, I mean, we didn't actually get picked the first year, which I think is a good lesson as well for anybody listening. Like, if you don't get picked the first year, just try again. Like when I said, why did we not get picked, they gave us absolutely no decent reasons. So I just thought, okay, fair enough, I guess I'll go again.
They just rolled the dice and just decided that you rolled a 1 rather than a 20.
Yeah. So I basically thought, I'd sort of pitched them this idea, and it was like, do you know what, we can do like experimental music based on the kind of like tape loops and things like that Brian Eno makes kind of ambient music with. and by using a load of effects pedals, and by using a load of software that I'd found in lockdown as well, that helps people to like use like move their hand or something like that over like a laser, and by the height of their hand or whatnot, it'll kind of change that into a note. So almost like they're playing a piano just by moving the hand up and down. And so those kinds of softwares that we use are incredibly good for getting people involved in stuff like this that might not have done anything musically before. So with you, obviously, you knew how to play the bass, but
Yep.
there's a lot of people involved in that project who'd never really played an instrument before, and we were doing like loops based on songs that people liked. So you could turn up. Someone turned up with a Sam Fender song, and we put it through like a loop pedal called a blooper.
Yep.
Recorded it onto tape and made the backing track for one of the songs that I think you played bass on. And the whole point of that project, I think, was that it was a real massive different thing. So I used to work in museums, like teaching people about what was in museum collections. I still do things like that sometimes.
Yeah.
So we one of the things that we really wanted to do as well was like have a jolly. So we'd go out with like a cultural thing and use that as a way of talking about things. So I had gone to Sunderland Museum, and Sunderland Museum's got loads of stuff in it about mining history and like history of like I think it's like perspex plastic or something like that, cutlery and things like that. But some buried in one of the front rooms of the museum is this set of boots that belonged to John Lilburne, who was like this massive historic figure in the English Civil War, which like you might have learned about that in your GCSEs. I don't know if you did them, or if you did history or anything like that, or even you might have looked into it. I'm not sure. I don't think it's especially well known, but I do think it's like that's an amazing part of that museum. This ancient set of shoes. And like there's nothing there to talk about it in the museum. So I was really, really keen to be like, well, let's make our music about this. Let's make our music about like this bloke who wrote about like human rights and freedoms in the like 1600s. Because in my mind, you know, if you've probably heard this phrase, you know, when you're working in the context of working with people who are disabled, you have this idea of social model of disability.
Yeah.
Which is like part of the reason why people get disabled is because of the way society's around them, not necessarily always to do with their disability. It might be to do with the kind of things they have to navigate, and that's where the real sort of disabling like occurs. So so I thought like, you know, what could be a better way to have a conversation about what people think of as like freedom in that context than by doing this music that has like very like it's almost like free jazz, doesn't have any, it's like very experimental. We're not sort of doing songs with like a beginning, middle, end chorus. We're doing things that have got like loops in them and things like that, and just adding little flourishes. We've got like loads of improvisational materials and things like that, and we're working from, you know, we were inspired by this piece of this museum. And so yeah, it sounds very complicated in some respects. When I like in my head when I'm saying it back, I'm thinking, God, that was a lot to talk about. But the really cool part was that we you know, you could sit and watch people and you could like hum into a microphone, and the hums you could use a MIDI thing to turn the hums into like a trumpet or a saxophone or something like that. So when you were doing that work, and we were doing the gig at 17, 19, we were like, oh, everyone would just kind of drop in, and like you were improvising on the bass at times.
Yeah.
And then we had these sort of songs that we'd all made over like maybe 2 days with this massive tray of equipment, where people are kind of sitting down and going, right, I'm going to play the piano on this bit, or I'm going to do this on this bit. Loads of them had never done those instruments before. So so yeah, really cool. Also, I don't know if you remember, but my friend Jane brought this synthesizer called a Lyra over.
Yes, I remember the synthesizer. It was
Yeah,
fantastic.
which is like this niche Russian synth unit that just sounds like utter evil. It's
It's incredible.
the most metal sounding synthesizer that I've ever come across. So like Yeah, and you can play that just by like putting your fingers down on like 2 or 3 little keys and then twiddling the knobs, and you just get these insane sounds out of it. So so that also made things really cool as well.
It did. I think I rocked up. If I remember rightly, I rocked up on the Wednesday and was kind of asked, do you wanna play by Ian Black, who
Yeah.
obviously works for Autism Able,
Mhm.
um, and it was like, yeah, sure. And I specifically remember you talking about like people having like navigate disabilities and stuff. The
Yeah.
one thing that sticks out with me with that is the fact that we had a loop of One by Metallica,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
which is obviously about a guy being sort of almost like trapped in his own head
Yeah,
after the
it's a
war.
good.
So I think like that's a really like I don't know. It's just a weird like sort of dot connection I've made there in my head. Um, but it was a lot of fun. It was very weird to play in the church for me. Like I said,
Yeah,
uh, church that sold alcohol was so I ended up having Jack Daniels in the church, which was a very unusual experience.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I wasn't complaining though.
Mhm.
Um, right. So how did Marrapalooza start then?
Um, after lockdown, you know, at this point, right, I've been putting on gigs in the Northeast for the best part of 20 years. And I've pretty, you know, I've done a lot of, and you know, done most things that I'd ever really wanted to do in that period of time. Um, and I had a a friend who runs a a festival that my band had played in London called Fest, and he had been involved in the sort of UK like punk rock scene basically his entire life, and this was like his big project to be like everybody I know is going to play this over this weekend, and he had kind of like a 3 day punk festival starting on the Friday and it's ending on the Sunday in the October of 2021, I think it was. So like just after lockdown, and it was basically the first gig I went to after lockdown, and I thought like this has been absolutely amazing. I couldn't believe what he'd achieved. It was like sold out. The tickets were a lot more expensive than they are for Marrapalooza, by the way. And yeah, it just over like four or five venues. So he ran that for 3 years, and I used to go. My old band played at a festival called Manchester Punk Festival, and we played in a place in Dundee called Book Your On Fest, and and I've also, you know, I've played at all kinds of different little things like uh oh god, like Long Division in Wakefield, which is really good. So like, you know, there's a lot. I think we used to have a lot more of that kind of multi-venue use of the Oosburn when I was younger because of Evolution Festival, which was like a festival that was run on the quayside, and it used to have this kind of local band thing beforehand. So I'd sort of had this idea and I'd talked about it, and obviously, like my friend Joel had done things around like the two Cloonies and things like that. But I was sort of thinking the Oosburn, there's nothing like the Oosburn in any other part of Britain, in my mind. Like you can't go to a big city and walk for like 15 minutes and walk past 7 or 8 different amazing venues and be in the sunshine and have loads of outdoor space and walk down the river and things like that. So if you were going to the Tyne Bar or a Grove, it's such an amazing stretch of city, and you know, I just that doesn't exist in any other part of the country. Like having toured all over it and whatnot, and played all of these kinds of little small venues and small festivals and things. So I thought, you know, I'm not saying that it's totally unique. Other people have done things that span different venues in the Oosburn, but me and my friend Hannah really wanted to set something up where it was like, let's try and do something that's over like 5 venues in the Oosburn, and I have this big long email contact book of all of the various different people who I've played for, who played for me over the years. And the initial idea was to make it like very grassroots and DIY and not involve the music industry whatsoever. Because I have disagreements with the music industry about about certain things. So we wanted to do a festival that didn't involve like working with managers and booking agents and various other things. And yeah, I think the first year, like, we're bringing in people from all over the country, and sort of sat back from it and was like, wow, this, this actually really worked. And I thought it was like quite an ambitious thing to do, and we managed to just about break even. And it took absolutely donkeys to put together. It's so much stress. I had some really, really good help from a lot of people I know. Like, our friend Steve was like just completely invaluable. And in the second year, I thought, right, what if we do this as like a consortium? And in my head, I was thinking, probably a bit naively, like, that'll mean that I don't have to do as much work. So because it's almost, sometimes I think putting this festival together, I'm always thinking, oh, it's gonna be a blast, this, and then forget until it's about a month beforehand, thinking, Jesus, this really is just as much work as it always has been. So in the second year, we got Beck from Tyne and Queer, and she programmed a stage at Little Buildings as well. And then in this upcoming year, obviously, Beck and me and Hannah and yourself are working on this year's. And this year's is a much more ambitious project. So the second year, we thought, I was a bit like, maybe we can be a little bit more ambitious. So we brought the bigger sort of headliner in Gruff Reese, who used to be in Super Furry Animals, who's like amazing, played at the Grove on the Friday. And then again, we brought sort of bands from all over the country for the Saturday, and we're doing that again. But this time it's a bit more of a mix of, there's a bit more music industry involved, because I did think, maybe we can keep being a little bit more ambitious each year. If we're building up a big audience, we can make things that are a bit more different. Now, I kind of, if you want to come and watch a music festival in Newsburn, there's other options now, and there wasn't so much. I think in the first year, I think it seemed quite new, to do something that had like a bigger touring band contingent. So this year it's like, we have a much bigger headliner on the Friday and the Saturday than we had before. We've got much bigger, like, and more well-known and really sort of cutting-edge bands from all over the country, and also the kind of my old sort of grassroots and DIY scene contact book, bringing people from various different far-flung parts of England and Wales and Scotland, and on top of that, loads of really, really fantastic sort of local bands, and a slightly different spread of venues. So no Clooney this year. So the Grove is kind of the biggest venue, and that means that we've kind of split a wider kind of selection at Oosburn. So we're not using Cobalt Studios this year. So it's much more based around like walking up and down the river. So you can go to Tyne Bar, 2x2 Brewery, where future collaborations and Otis Mabel are doing this stage, and the Grove on the kind of eastern side of the river, or you can walk like up the riverbank, like kind of up along the river and end up at Cumberland Arms, Little Buildings, and Old Coal Yard as well. So there's a much bigger spread, and yeah, I don't know. I don't want to keep maybe is it worth me kind of breaking down some of the bands that are on some of the stages, because I could
You
not
can
really.
do. You can do. I'm just looking at the old lineups because you've had some interesting bands. You've had Slug, obviously, which I know quite well.
Yeah.
You've had you've had a band called Cry, which is an incredible name for a band.
Yeah.
Vulgar Dissection, who I was looking up this morning, they are great. That's a death metal band. Stuff like Pit Pony, and then what else have you had? Me Lost Me, which I've seen. I love. Obviously, you mentioned Jane earlier. There's Me Lost Me, and you've had a load of all these DIY bands, and then we can talk about the lineup, see who we've got on the lineup, because I know we talked about Brad Stank last week, who's one of the headliners, I believe.
Yeah. So Brad Stank is it's quite hard to describe his music, because I guess it's kind of like a sort of lounge pop, almost like Marvin Gaye style. Like affair. He's playing at the Lubber Fiend on the opening night, which is the Friday, and we're just about to kind of announce the support bands for that. It's going to be really, really amazing. He's so unique as like a musician and performer, and maybe a little bit away from, I guess, most of the stuff that we've done in the past has been very kind of rock oriented to some extent, in some way, shape, or form. And I've always sort of seen Marrapalooza as being something that's very like eclectic. So
Yeah.
so he's yeah, amazing. Like, and that's like a dead cheap Friday ticket to start the festival off, and but maybe a little bit smaller than Gruff Race from last year.
Yeah, well, we can talk about tickets. What other bands are you looking forward to seeing this year at the festival?
So I struggle every year so far because there's always more that I want to see than I can see, and the last couple of years I've often had to like do some damage control somewhere because something might have gone wrong or something like at some point, so I've had to run around a lot. But this year I'm trying to imagine who I'm like most excited to see or who I've seen before. So where I'm like where I'm planning to kind of be or go around. But I'm not kind of drawing the lineup up for myself.
Yeah,
Trying to draw it
that's
up for
fair.
other people. So I'm gonna end up missing a lot of the stuff that I really want to see. But there is just some incredible stuff. I'm gonna think about things in terms of when I or like what stage they're at, so I can give kind of like a spread of stages. So Native James, who are playing at Old Coal Yard, are like, and when I say this, I didn't think that I'd like this combination quite as much as I do, but they're like a kind of old school new metal, like Deftones meets or like Limp Bizkit meets like modern British grime crossover band, and they're just absolutely incredible. I saw them at a gig earlier in the year, and I went up to the singer and was just like, "That is one of the best live shows I've been to, and absolutely donkeys." And I don't know. I think it's just the charisma of like of the band as a whole, and just the just gigantic riffs they've got. They've got, and like how much they can sort of like make a room go off is just like I honestly, I'm so excited to see them again. The stage that they're on at Old Coal Yard has a lot of really, really like incredible. I'm only going to really talk about like the out of town bands, I think, just because
Yeah, it's
people
fine.
will know the local ones. It's got a really incredible kind of post punk hardcore crossover band from Bristol called Knives on it, who are again like just really, really amazing innovators of the genre. And if they were like an American band, they'd be absolutely humongous. They're on tour with a band called Super Bloom at the minute, who are like a really like big American kind of almost like shoegaze grunge sort of crossover band. But they're like, yeah, they are massive like leading lights of British kind of rock, punk, and metal. And I think this is like a really good opportunity to see them in quite a small room, because I don't think they'll be in rooms like that for much longer. They
Yeah.
remind me a lot of an American hardcore band that I really love called Up, a little like quite a lot like those guys. I'm not sure if I should have, not sure if I was allowed to curse there. So
I mean, I said earlier, so
so
if I get asked to bleep it, I'll get asked to
yeah,
bleep
yeah.
it. It's me editing the video anyway.
So that they will be absolutely spectacular on that stage. At the time bar, we've got a band called University, who are like oh my god, they're like they're almost like if they remind me a bit of a band called Los Campesinos that I was really into when I was younger. They're like almost like a sort of, if you've ever heard the band Fugazi, they're quite a
Mm.
bit like that, but like very like also a little bit insane, and like so full of like I think all the guys in the bands are like 18-year-old students, and you can really tell because they're just
Yeah.
so frenetic. And they're like riffs and music writing are absolutely amazing. There's also a band called Crush on that stage with two U's,
Yeah.
who are I don't know, how would you describe them? They're sort of like a like a really like big sounding like indie band that sounds a bit like maybe like Smashing Pumpkins or something like that. But like with this really kind of like uh big room filling sound, which I think is going to be really fantastic at the time, but as like the sun's coming down. I think that'll be really, really amazing. That's kind of probably one of the most exciting bands that we've got on that stage as well. At Cumberland Arms, there's a huge like spread of I like the stage at the Cumberland Arms, to see all of the bands that are on there normally, you probably have to spend about 70 quid to see them all separately. So this is this amazing group of bands that we've plugged into this relatively small room. There's a band called Brown Horse playing there, who are like alt country, like alternative country, almost like Crazy Horse style, like 70s country band. They're very like they were recently in an article by this American magazine, Brooklyn Vegan, which was like, who are the faces of the new kind of alt country movement, and all of them were American. They were like MJ Lenderman and Waxahachie and all of these kind of American bands that are like really big and who have like incredible records. And then we have this one British band, Brown Horse, in that list, and they're amazing. I can't wait to see them. They're very like neat. If you're into like Neil Young, you'd love them.
Yeah.
There's a songwriter on that stage called Chris Brain, who's from Leeds, and his kind of music's very like finger picky. I think on the Cumberland Arms stage, we've tried to bring together like a lot of kind of folk like and country and songwritery kind of tradition type music. So that stage is very like thematic this year, whereas previously the stages have just kind of been like all kinds of different bands here, all kinds of different bands here. So now if you go to Old Courtyard, you're going to get loads of really good like punk rock and hardcore there. If you go to Time Bar, there's lots of different kind of indie rock with loads of like that'll suit like a big open space. And if you go to Cumberland, you're going to get a lot of like intimate gigs with so Hayden Thorpe is the kind of headliner of that stage, and Hayden was in the band Wild Beasts. And this is his kind of solo project on Domino. And Hayden grew up in Cumbria, so I think his most recent album, Ness, was part of a like an artist residency that he did at Sage, which is about like this old like nuclear testing facility or something like that. So like a very interesting subject for an album. But obviously like incredibly talented artists. Wild Beasts, when I was kind of in my 20s, were like a massive band. And I remember seeing them at Gateshead Town Hall. My friend Joel put them on, and that was like one of the best gigs I'd seen in Newcastle. So there's all of these, and I'm trying to think of other bands on that stage. There's a band called Mumble Tide on that stage, who are from Bristol as well. They're like a kind of trying to think like Bell and Sebastian style kind of indie pop band with these big kind of synthy I don't know. It's really hard. It's hard to describe because I'm getting on a bit, and I'm starting like a lot of my references are very old now.
It's all right.
But they're very like the singer's voice is absolutely incredible, and they're just like if you were ever into a band like if you ever into the sort of C86 tape scene or any of that stuff that gave birth to the likes of Bell and Sebastian, like Orange Juice and all of these kind of Glaswegian indie pop and Scottish indie pop bands from the 90s, then like Mumble Tide are probably the best band that I can think of that's like that at the minute on the touring scene. Yeah, well, let me think of some more. So, and then on the main stage, it is kind of a mix of like some of the best like big northeast bands that I could think of, and this is the stage at the Grove, and touring bands as well. So main stage has Venus Girls, Ruth Lyon, I think it's Lyon, or it might be Leon. Safest Place and She Drew the Gun, who's I can't remember where She Drew the Gun's from. I think she's from somewhere in the south, and I cannot remember because I have to like keep a mental Rolodex of all of the different bands and where they're from, and sometimes I just kind of keep up because there's so many. So yeah, there's a real like mix of bands there, but I guess it's kind of everyone on that stage is a little bit more like maybe pop and indie kind of oriented. I get Venus Girls might take issue with that because they're very rock. They recently played, so they were on they were a download festival, for instance, a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, to be fair, downloads all sorts. They had the Venga Boys there, so
right. Okay.
um, they had the Venga Boys on the Thursday night,
Yeah.
which
I
everyone loved because
yeah.
as much as we like angry movie, we do love a
Yeah.
bit of like hyper pop and stuff like that. It's just we like a bit of daft fun.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
most of us.
so all of the bands on the main stage are just like the most promising Northeast bands, and She Drew the Gun's like our probably the biggest band that we've brought to the festival so far in terms of like just having just these gigantic pop tune. Like when you say pop, it's like everyone's idea of what pop is she, like a lot of her songs more in the sort of 60s pop vein, like very like old school British pop, and then
Yeah,
rock and whatnot. And so it's maybe a little bit less Venga Boys and a bit more kind of I don't know, the Kinks or something like that might be a
yeah,
better reference. Um, so yeah, such a talented songwriter, Louisa, and also like very much fits the ethos of our festival, which is like, you know, we're very DIY community oriented festival, and we try and make it as affordable as possible, and we have a selection of tickets for people on low incomes, um, and we use that to make the festival like as affordable as we can. And every year we bring in um, like stage stalls and banners and things from trade unions and social causes and things like that. And so, you know, we've got a very particular kind of like grassroots community ethos. And I think her music and the places that she's played, and like she was at the Left Field stage at Glastonbury this year.
yeah,
So I think she really sort of epitomizes like the ethos of our festival, and everybody else on that stage are just such accomplished like musicians with in a way that makes me really really proud of the Northeast music scene, because now we can create talent and like it can be recognized all over the country in a way that was, I think, much harder when I was younger. Because when I was younger it was like, you know, you're in the soup, Future Heads or Field Music, or Maximo Park.
yeah,
And we really get like it was much harder for everybody else to get out and around the country after those few bands had been picked up.
yeah.
Um, so yeah. And what about your stage?
My stage. Let's give me 2 seconds. I will load up the sheet because we have a few bands. Pretty much all our bands are sort of indie slash rock slash punk. There's a lot of stuff in there. Well, that's the wrong. I can't Google. That's what I want. Where's my Google Drive? There we are. That's the one I want. So we've got a couple of bands that are from our different music projects. So we've got Lydia and Leighton, who are incredible. Leighton did work experience with us a couple of weeks ago. He's an
Mm,
absolutely fantastic guitarist.
mm,
Um, we've got a band called Seven Bridges, who are sort of almost like a idols type band, which
yeah.
they're quite political. They've got a song. I know they just brought out a song a couple of weeks ago called "Get in the Sea," which is a very fun song.
Mhm,
Um, we got a band called the Milk Lizards, and
mhm.
then topping the night is a band called Amateur Ornithologist. I know when you asked us to book, you talked about wanting to get some neuro-divergent bands, and that's what we've done. I know that Amateur Ornithologist, um, definitely neurodivergent. A
Mm,
couple of others are as well, especially from our music project. But
yeah.
it's exciting, and it's been interesting learning about like how to book bands and stuff like that. Like you said, like I mean, obviously it was easier back in the day because it was just drop an email, and it
Mm,
still is. It still does feel like that a bit. Just oh yeah, like this is this is how much we can pay, etc., etc., etc.
mm,
But it's been fascinating, like learning that sort of side, because the future collaborations festivals we've done, the side I've been on, a lot of it is doing social media stuff and doing sort of the hosting and obviously a little bit of playing as well.
yeah.
So like learning this sort of side and doing the stage managing well, I'm excited to do that on the actual day. I
Yeah.
think. It's been a good learning opportunity, definitely, and it's definitely something that I'd like to do again in the future. Um, I know there's a couple of bands that I haven't been able to book for whatever reason. That are sort of in the back of my mind. If I do something like this again, I'd like to book them, especially before. There's especially like a couple of bands that I can see will get big because they're great. They're just incredible bands,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and it's just hopefully they get the right opportunities. I know there's some bands that have got big. I mean, there are like there's a band that I like. They're from down south. A band called Black Gold who got an opportunity to with they toured with Limp Bizkit and then Skindred.
Oh wow.
I saw them with Skindred in the NX,
Yeah, cool.
what used to be the Academy, and they're really big now as a new metal band.
Yeah,
They're absolutely incredible. And I can see there's definitely at least one band that as soon as they get a tour with the right band, they're just gonna take off.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And hopefully I can either book them if I do this again or convince convince the powers that be to book them for the Future Collaborations Festival when we do it again. But yeah,
Yeah,
like I said, it's been a fantastic learning opportunity. I do appreciate the opportunity you've given.
it's absolute pleasure, Adam. Could you tell it? I think we mentioned future collaborations a couple of times. Could you maybe mention a bit about? Because I was so keen to make sure that like what you guys have done with future collaborations is so impressive, and I thought, you know, what at our festival could we not have the same like place for the work that you do be part of our thing, so that you
Yeah,
you know, so that you're expanding and getting more and more opportunities to do that stuff, and getting more opportunities to put disabled and neurodiverse musicians in front of an audience. And we've built this kind of festival over the like last few years. Thought it was an absolute perfect opportunity to kind of merge the bits of work that we were doing. But I guess if this sort of bit of podcasting was something I could share to my audience as well, it'd be great to
yeah,
talk a little bit about what future collaborations involves. If you're okay to do that.
yeah. That's fine. That's fine. I could do that. I'll be able to send you a link
Yeah.
once I've edited it all together. So basically, the Future Collaborations project, it's about bringing neurodivergent and neurotypical people together.
Mm.
We've done a couple of festivals. We have a Battle of the Bands that's about to happen. That happens as of recording on Friday the 25th of July. Um, and it's just about giving opportunities to neurodivergent people. Not just on stage, but like behind the scenes as well. A lot of the stage management for the festivals and a lot of the ticketing and some of the advertising as well is all done by neurodivergent people, members of Autism Able.
Yeah.
People like people we've worked with previously, people like Scotty P who's part of Autism Able, people like Hayden, people like Jim
Mm.
Bob, all get to help out, even doing some DJing during between
Yeah.
sets and stuff like that. And it's honestly it's such a, especially the festivals, they're a lot more chill. Like I went down to Birmingham a couple of weeks ago for what was effectively a 1 day festival.
Yeah.
Um and it was crowded and hectic, and don't get me wrong, it was a lot of fun,
Mm.
but it like future collaborations, the future collaborations festivals especially are like basically the complete opposite of that. There's
Yeah.
like places to chill, there's breakout rooms, and it's genuinely like a fantastic thing. I love it. It's one of my favorite things to do, and the fact that I get to help out with them, I get to host them, it's genuinely a pleasure. And I think, especially as someone who is neurodivergent, it's an opportunity that I've never really had before.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same with a lot of people in sort of that are neurodivergent. They get to come out and they get to help out and they get to learn different things, and it sort of gives them, it definitely gives me a sense of responsibility. And I think it's the same for a lot of other neurodiverse people that contribute.
That's amazing. Really good summary. So we're doing that at 2x2 tap this year. So, and I'm really, really grateful to Josie for from 2x2, because that's a new venue for us. And when we were putting this festival together this year, I was really worried that I wouldn't have like an extra slot that we could run that stage in, because it looked like we were running out of venues quite quickly. And I sort of rang Josie and said, do you think, I've noticed that you sometimes put bands on. Do you think we could kind of have you as part of our festival this year and next year? And she's really up for it. She's been really, really fantastic about, about letting us have the space for like an extra venue for Marrapalooza. So
Yeah.
really, really pleased to that, because it's also such an amazing room, like, isn't it? Like a really big, tall building, which, like, bands are going to sound absolutely massive in. So I'm really dead excited to see the gigs there.
I think it's gonna be fantastic. The whole day is gonna be fantastic. But where can people get tickets?
So if you want tickets, it's the website is www.marrapalooza, marrapalooza.co.uk. marrapalooza.co.uk. You can probably just Google it as well, and like the word, or you could go on. You could find my Instagrams, Portions for Foxes. Yeah, and please do pick up tickets. I mean, I know that since lockdown, there's been a real change in the culture of like buying tickets for events, where people don't really do it until like the day before, and I do the same sometimes, even though I know exactly how much stress it causes people. So we're doing well for tickets this year, but the more people buy it in advance, the easier it is to sleep at night. So if you do like your sort of grassroots and DIY music scene, and you prefer to have different options to things that are just owned by gigantic corporations and whatnot, then like it does help when you buy the tickets advance and don't leave it till the day before.
Yeah, that's fair. The link to the website will be in the description. Was the link to your Instagram, so
Right.
people can find out a bit more information.
Fantastic. I guess that's us then.
That's us. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time, David. I appreciate it. I'll edit this together, bang it out, put it on the YouTube channel. I'll send you a link.
Awesome. Brilliant. Cheers.
Thank you very much for watching, everyone. And I'll see you next time.